Let's check eBay. I wonder if there are any good guy dolls. But this is kind of expensive. Oh, there's one. Let's check the listing. What? $3,000? Are you fucking kidding me? Oh, hell no. Has that ever happened to you? Well, it's happened to me, so the best solution is let's just make one, shall we? Alright, now let's go over what you'll need for this project. Most importantly, you're going to need the doll patterns, and the link to where I got these will be in the description box below. You're going to need some extra copy paper because we're going to have to modify these patterns just a little bit. You're going to need a pair of good sewing scissors. You're going to need some thread that matches your choice of fabric. You're going to need the skin tone fabric of your choice. And you're going to need a good old sewing machine, but if you don't have one, you can just do this by hand. Now, just saying that the fabric that I used was not a good compatible one to sew by hand. I used a fabric called butter suede because I got it for an extremely low price. But I would recommend some kind of velour or even some kind of stretch fabric in a skin tone color. Now, I also had to make the arm on the pattern a lot bigger, but you can do this if you want. You don't have to, but it's just what I chose to do. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the front of the face pattern, which you can see right here, and we're going to take a piece of copy paper and fold the copy paper in half like this. Then we're going to take the front of the face pattern, and you see I'm showing you the front and the back. You need to have the front of the face facing the fold of the paper. And what we're going to do is we're just going to extend the sides of this pattern so that we can create a full face so that we can paint it on later. You can see we should have this kind of shape. And then you're just going to cut it out on the fold. And this is what your final face shape should look like. Now this is a pattern that I created and you can get for free in the link in the description box below. What I did for this was I just painted it onto the fabric using my light box. And now we're just going to cut it out, and this is what your final face pattern should look like. In the future, I will make more face patterns that you can use, but for right now, this is the only one that I have. And you can see this is the finished face piece. And now let's put together the head. So to do this, you're going to need the back of the head pattern, and you're going to pin it onto your fabric because we're only going to cut this out one at a time instead of doing two at once. So you're going to pin it on and then cut it out, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use this one to trace over onto the other fabric to create an exact copy. And you're just going to want to cut it out, and you don't have to leave a seam allowance because we already have that. And you can see here that I messed up because when you cut this out, you need to have both of the good sides facing each other so that you have a mirror image. And this is really important for sewing. And now we're just going to sew the front of the neck and the chin together using a straight stitch on your sewing machine, or if you're doing this by hand, just sew it all the way up. And for the chin, you can see I pivoted my machine and I went back up just to have a secure fit. And now what I'm doing is I'm sewing up the darts on both sides of the head. And you can see that I'm also pivoting my project around to sew backwards. And I'm just doing the same thing to the other one. Now what I'm doing is I'm laying the two back pieces onto the face, lining up the chin with the chin of the face pattern, and then pinning them both to both sides of the face. There will be a spot at the top of the head where the pattern doesn't reach, and that's okay. And then we're just going to sew around this space that we just created. And you want to take out the pins as you go, because if you run over them with your sewing machine, you could break them or bend them out of shape. And now when you fold it right side out, you will see that we now have the sides of the head and the chin already done. And now we just need to do the top. Optional here, but what I decided to do was do a few stitches on the inside to create the look of a butt chin like a good guy doll has. But this is completely optional. Alright, now you're going to take another piece of copy paper and you're just going to measure the top of the head, rolling it like I did just right there. And then you're going to cut this out, and this is what we're going to use as our pattern to create the back of the head and the back of the neck. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold the fabric over twice. And then you're going to fold over the square and then trace half of it onto the fabric, and then cut out a long rectangle out of this fabric. If you're confused by what I'm saying, just watch what I'm doing. You also want to make sure to leave a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on this as well. And now you're going to take the top of the head and the top of this rectangle and pin them together. This will be on a curve, so you do need to pin around the curve. For this, I used a lot of pins. But if you wanted to just use a few, that's up to you. And if you were hand sewing, then you don't really need to use pins at all. And now you're just going to sew that onto the top of the head. And again, we're just going to use a straight stitch. If you're using a stretchy fabric, then a zigzag stitch would be the best to use. And if you were sewing that by hand, then you don't really need to worry about it. Alright, and then once you're done, you're going to pin the sides to the side of the head pieces that we sewed on earlier. And this also has curves, so you want to make sure that you are pinning them on the curve. And again, I was just using a lot of pins to go all the way down. And if you did it right, there should be some overhang. But don't worry about it because the neck on the pattern is way too long for what we need anyway, so we will end up trimming it down later on. You can see here I'm just trimming off some extra fabric that I did not need at the top. And I would suggest pinning both sides at this point so you can just sew them on. Alright, and now we're just going to sew it on. And you want to sew on both sides. And now just flipping it inside out or right side out so that you can see your finished head. And now let's move on to putting together the body. You're going to take the body pattern and put it on the fold of your fabric and then trace around it, cutting around, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You can see here I'm cutting out a square of fabric for the back piece. And for the back, on the pattern, you need to cut out that thing in the middle, and this is what we're going to use later on to stuff the body. And don't forget to cut the darts. And now I'm just sewing up the darts on all 4 sides of the body. And now I'm just taking the pattern and marking out where the neck is going to be and then pinning all around the sides. And now we're just starting at the neckline and then sewing all the way around to the other side. Now we're just flipping it inside out And this is completely optional, but I wanted my good guy to talk, so I'm going to sew in a pocket on the inside of the body to house his voice box. If you wanted this voice box, I will leave the Amazon link in the description box below. And I'm just sewing it on around 3 sides so that I can take this in and out. Alright, now let's get to the arms. I do apologize, but when I was filming, my camera died, so I didn't get footage of myself cutting out the arms from the pattern. And so all you really need to do is just trace them on fabric and then sew them together. I left it on a lot of fabric because this material does not do well with really small edges. And I figured because there was a lot of curves, this would be the best thing as well. In between the fingers, you should leave 2 stitches before you pivot and then go around another finger. You can see this is what I'm doing. I'm just going back and forth with 2 stitches. The reason why you want 2 stitches is because you want enough room to get your scissors in there to cut in between so that the fingers aren't all wrinkly and weird looking. And now I'm just cutting out the finished arms from the fabric. Depending on what fabric you choose, you will have to cut little darts around the curved edges. But mine, I didn't really need to do this. I just did this as a precautionary thing. And I just used the back of a pencil to push out all the little fingers. And then all you need to do is just stuff them and sew the bottoms closed. Now let's put together the legs. On the pattern, there are 2 separate leg pieces, so you'll need to tape those together. And then I just did this the same way I did the arms, by pinning it onto the fabric, tracing it, and then sewing it. Now on the patterns there is a toe cap, but I decided not to use it because when I did sew it on, it looked kind of like a penis. And that's not really what I wanted my leg to look like. And so I'm just sewing around the 2 sides, not sewing around the toes, because those will have to be sewn down at a separate time. And so you just saw me sew down the back of the leg, and now I'm sewing up the front of the leg. And all you need to do next is just cut it out. And again, if you need to do darts, then go ahead and do that. And now I'm just folding the front down so the 2 seams are aligned, and then sewing across the toes. It's going to be covered by shoes anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then all you need to do is just flip it right side out, and then stuff it. You want this to be pretty firm, but not too firm. And now I'm just pinning the top closed. And you could either do this by hand or by machine. And I just decided to do it by machine because this material does not do good with hand sewing. And I'm just stuffing the top of the leg just a little bit more with some extra stuffing. Then just taking a needle and thread and sewing it back together. You can see I had to use a pair of pliers to pull out the needle at some points because this fabric was so tough. Now let's attach the head to the body. This is as simple as putting the head inside of the body, right sides together, and then pinning and sewing shut. I had to cut about 1.5 inches off of the original neck because it was just way too long. And my suggestion would be that before you do this, you sew a dart up the neck, because I had to do some modifications to the back of the neck when I was finished stuffing. It just looked a little weird. And all you need to do next is just sew it together. Alright, and now we're just folding this right side out. And this is what it should look like unstuffed. Now all you need to just do is sew on the body and sew on the limbs by hand. And on the website where I got the pattern, there are complete instructions there. So go ahead and click there. So now let's talk about the hair. So my camera's memory card got full while I was filming, so I lost a lot of footage, like not even enough to edit together. But I will have any pertinent links that I followed with the hair on my doll in the description box below. So this is how my good guy turned out. I really hope you guys enjoy this video. And if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. And also, please watch out for the next part where we make the clothes in the next coming weeks. Thanks for watching!